In the meantime, I do want to get to the latest here on those U.S. strikes on Iran. Take a look at this image over the White House here at this hour as President Trump says the U.S. will resume talks with Iran in the coming days. Iran's foreign minister firing back, though, at President Trump, telling him to drop the, quote, disrespectful and unacceptable tone toward Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. I do want to pop this up here on your screen as he did post on social media about just that. He said if President Trump is genuine about wanting a deal, he should put aside the disrespectful and unacceptable tone towards Iran's Supreme Leader, Grand Ayatollah Khamenei, and stop hurting his millions of heartfelt followers. The great and powerful Iranian people who showed the world that the Israeli regime had no choice but to run to, quote, daddy to avoid being flattened by our missiles, do not take kindly to threats and insults. If illusions lead to worse mistakes, Iran will not hesitate to unveil its real capabilities, which will certainly end any delusion about the power of Iran, end quote. This comes as President Trump warned that he would, quote unquote, absolutely consider bombing Iran again, quote, without question, if intelligence determined Iran was attempting to enrich uranium to concerning levels.
If Iran...
Are you from Iran?
No, I'm not from Iran. I'm from the UK. But if the intelligence reports conclude that Iran can enrich uranium to a level that concerns you, would you consider bombing the country again?
Without question, absolutely.
And have you had any conversations?
Turned out to be unbelievable. But, you know, our incredible flyers and I call them the shots, these guys are unbelievable. Think, from 52,000 feet, they hit the equivalent of a refrigerator door. They actually hit it right in the center, so it's much smaller than that. And just bomb after bomb going deeper, deeper, blowing up. Incredible, incredible thing. I don't know if you heard the general. He was very impressive. Raisin Cane. You know, he's the one that beat ISIS for me. And he did it in a matter of weeks. And I was told it was going to take 4 or 5 years. And when I got this job, I always said, if I get this job, I'm going to put that guy as the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And Dan Kane, and he, when I heard his name was Raisin, his nickname is Raisin Cane. I said, you got to be kidding. So I liked him right from the beginning, but he knocked out ISIS in a time that nobody ever thought possible. And when this attack was completed and so successful, I said, now I know how you knocked out ISIS so quickly. But we have the best people, we have the best equipment in the world. You know, I rebuilt the military during my 4 years, during my other term. We have the best equipment in the world. The problem is we gave away, you know, a lot of it, but small, relatively speaking. We gave a lot of it away to Afghanistan. Shouldn't have happened. That just shows how incompetent they were. They gave all that equipment away, billions and billions of dollars worth. Shouldn't have happened, but that was small compared to what we have. Now we have a great military with great people.
And these are some of the images that have now been released within the last few hours showing activity again at one of those sites that was struck by the U.S. 1 week ago. We are, of course, working to get some more information about all of that, as again, these images here just released. And these were actually released a bit earlier by the Department of Defense, showing some of the action there from those MOPs, as they are known. Again, we talked about the B-2 bombers and that situation, again, all taking place 1 week ago there in Iran. A lot to discuss, as always, so I do want to bring in Mark Chandler, the Director of Government Relations at Coastal Carolina University and Professor of Practice. Now, he's also a former senior defense intelligence official. Thank you so much for taking the time, Mark, as always, to be here with us.
You're welcome, Josh, and good morning to you.
Good morning. Well, we did just play those comments there from President Donald Trump during his news conference yesterday. Now, he did make a few comments there, and he was asked by a reporter with the BBC, saying, of course, that he would, quote unquote, absolutely bomb Iran again if they did enrich uranium to those levels that are considered to be concerning. So what do you make overall of that statement there by the president?
Well, you know what? I'm going to consider that a credible threat from the president. And when I say that, you look at, I think now, We have established that we will follow our words with actions, and that's what the president really established on that. You know, you're looking at what happened in the preceding weeks before our strike last weekend, and you would think we've got to go through a long process of developing a plan, coming up with another strike operation and package. But I can tell you that what happened last weekend was not as extensive as some of the plans that we have in place for going after the Iran nuclear program. I mean, it was really a limited strike when you look at it. I mean, it was extensive, it was highly successful, but it was still limited when you look at the scope of the program because Israel had been in there. So if the president orders such a strike, again, because Iran's not following through on any kind of negotiation, I think that you could see a strike package probably dropping bombs within hours after the president so orders, not the days that we took last time. So I look at that. I think now is a good time to bring up deterrence. You know, the president was speaking from the podium, from the White House, and I think his words now have a deterrent credibility. That is something that you and I have talked about during the Israel-Hamas war that Israel definitely had against Hezbollah, against Iran, because they were willing to use force. We lost that in the last administration. In one weekend, you see that the president has restored our deterrence credibility against Iran, and I think that message also goes to some others. So we could have a strike. The president's serious. We could have a strike within hours if we needed to.
Iran's supreme leader sent out a message making his first public statement days after that strike, and he essentially declared victory over the U.S. And we kind of saw that same type of declaration there in the statement I just read from Iran's foreign minister. Do the people of Iran really believe that? I know that there was this internet outage. I'm not sure if the internet has been restored there, but a lot of folks who are in Iran didn't have a clear idea of exactly what was going on. So do they believe the messages that are coming from Iran's supreme leader declaring victory when we've obviously seen the aftermath of the strikes?
Well, you know, that's an excellent point, the way you break it down, Josh. And first off, let me comment about their comments. If that's what victory looks like, I would absolutely hate to see what defeat looks like if they were to announce that. So what you have is this is nothing more than rhetoric from the Iranian regime playing to the public. They have to have some sort of bravado that comes out there. Not only was there an internet outage, you know, they shut down any access to the real world, the outside world. They tried to push information only on what the Iranian regime wanted. You also had the Ayatollah, the supreme leader, going in hiding for almost the entire Israeli bombing campaign. And then, of course, while the U.S. strikes. So there is a certain amount of the population that will always believe what the regime's going to tell them. That they're so fervent believers in the religious fanaticism that they have in Iran that they're going to believe it. But I think you're going to have certain elements, and this is going to be among the younger generation that actually are going to question that, and they're going to try to seek outside information. Iran, an authoritarian regime, is going to try to control that. They're going to try to clamp that down. They're still doing it. They're still going after folks who are trying to reach the outside world, either communicate out or receive information in. So yes, a degree of the population will always believe what they say. They want to, but you're also going to have those that question it. And just like the student protests from years ago, they're going to reach out and try to gather information. It's going to be hard in this regime, but they are going to try.
What you're looking at, or what you were looking at there, were some of the images that have been released, and they're showing kind of the aftermath here. We've seen a lot of this over the past several days coming in, and this one shows some activity near one of those locations that was hit by the U.S. there in Iran, one of the nuclear sites 1 week ago. Now, when you're talking about strikes overall on Iran's nuclear program, how difficult can it be overall to really assess the extent of the damage done to the sites? Because we saw that one report that was leaked. It had low confidence, so not a lot of confidence there. It did say that there was the potential that these weren't destroyed. So how difficult is it to really figure that out just yet?
Well, first off, the BDA, and that's called Battle Damage Assessment. We do that after every strike operation, whether it's as critical as this one or say a smaller strike against a smaller facility or target area. And we go through that process. That takes time. And I know in today's information age, everybody's starving for information. They want, I've got to have it now, instant news, but it doesn't work that way. So the intelligence community right now is going through this BDA process, and it takes time. And for these sophisticated targets, if you will, these deeply buried targets, that could take time. And we're going to see a combination of agencies involved. The NGA, National Geospatial Agency, National Security Agency, the NSA, DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency is going to be involved, CIA will be involved, and Central Command. That's the command that kind of oversaw these strikes, and they're ultimately responsible for reporting out. And they're going to use sources. The sources are imagery, and you're showing some great imagery. And actually, Josh, that tells me some things. If I'm looking at that imagery that you're showing right now, what I see is they can't get inside those facilities. They've been blocked off. They have to dig their way in. So that does give me some feedback on the success of the targets. Let me say this quickly. The operational aspect of this mission, those B-2 bomber crews, that they were tremendous. They were successful. They flew into harm's way, and they did a tremendous job of getting the bombs where they go. They put bombs from 30,000 feet on a target the size of, say, a refrigerator in your house. I don't know about you, but I have trouble hitting a green in golf from 190 yards sometimes. So that's the sophistication that they have. But back to the intelligence community, they're going to break this down, use all sources that they can. What would be great is if we could get inside the facility and look at the damage that was created there. And that's human. That's trying to get sources in there or teams in there to look at it. And Iran isn't allowing anybody in. So that's going to be a problem. I'd like some independent inspectors or U.S. inspectors. But let me say this. Even though there is this assessment, and it does take time, knowing what I know about the plan, knowing what I know about the Iranian nuclear program and what's at those sites, some of that equipment is so sophisticated and so sensitive that it can't withstand even small vibrations. We put hundreds of thousands of pounds of explosives into that mountain. Whatever was inside that mountain did not survive intact. That program is severely damaged and set back for quite a long time. That you can't get past it. That's the physics of explosions that's taking place. But I would like to see really what's inside there.
My last question for you here, as we talk a little bit more about that classified document that we were discussing here. As I mentioned, it was considered to be low confidence, but obviously it was published by media members because someone leaked it. It did get out there. So I want to ask, just based on your experience here, how difficult can it be to essentially tie that to somebody and determine who the leaker was?
Well, this was an egregious act, and I would call it treason. It violates policy, it violates law, and I do hope they find the person. I mean, person or persons who were responsible for it. I'll tell you, Josh, this was allegedly linked to DIA and coming out of DIA. That would have come out of the center, the production center that I actually ran in the middle teens, 20 teens out there, the Middle East and Africa Regional Center, and the Iran divisions inside that. So, that hit me personally when I saw that. I'm thinking, this is just terrible. But without revealing the full process, DIA sends these reports across the entire intelligence community, and they send it to people not in the intelligence community. So everyone in Washington has access to this electronically. That members of Congress can get to this, their staffers can get to this, people in other agencies. So what happened is now it's going to be very difficult, since these reports do get extensive distribution. You've got to find who accessed it, who possibly hit print on one of their reports that they had, who worked at. And this is going to be an extensive investigation. When I was in the Joint Staff J2, we would report some highly sensitive information, and a day or two later, I would see it in the press, which was just unfathomable. We initiated investigations. Sometimes we found them, sometimes we didn't. So this is going to be a long process. But somebody leaked this who is who is anti-Trump, wants to make him look bad, or doesn't care about the security of the United States forces operating, because the data that goes into this can reveal sources. And so that can hurt our future intelligence gathering. So this is terrible. I do hope they find them, but it's not going to be easy to find these folks.
All right, Mark Chandler, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here. Obviously, a lot to discuss. So is there anything that we missed that you want to make sure to get out there?
Well, Josh, just real quick, the House and Senate were briefed this week. So they got that same report. I would just be careful about how that comes out. It's briefed in a reduced group and also in a special facility, a compartmented facility over in the Congress. So I hope that further details, more important details, don't get leaked through that. And two other things I'd be remiss. While everybody's focused on Iran, you've got the activity taking place with Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. They tried to move in. Israeli did a strike there. So we've got to keep an eye on that. Hamas, they refused to give up. We worked through a lot of that. And then finally, Josh, on a personal note, I'd just like to point out that this week, available for publishing this week, is going to be a book I wrote on the Israel-Hamas war. Looking at this, and what I'm basically saying here is thank you, Josh, because you and I have done over 80 interviews on the Israel-Hamas war. And from that, I thought, people need to understand what's going on. So with your insightful questions, a lot of the process that I went through, I wanted to give a shot and put a book out there. And this will be available out there on Amazon here in just a few days out there. But Josh, if you hadn't called me the night of October 7th in 2023, we never would have started the interviews, your insightful commentary and your questions, and it never would have led to something like this. So I want to give you a personal thanks as well, Josh.
Mark, thank you so much. And hopefully my name is mentioned about 100 times in that book. Just kidding, obviously. But thank you again. Everyone out there, go buy that, because Mark Chandler is an amazing guest and has a lot of insight. Thank you again for being here with us.
Thanks, Josh. You're welcome. And your name's 101 times in the book.
That's even better. All right, and I do want to pop this up on your screen right here, just coming in from President Donald Trump on Truth Social about all of this here. And I'm going to take that down so you can see more of it. But he said, who in the fake news media is the sleazebag saying that, quote, President Trump wants to give Iran $30 billion to build non-military nuclear facilities? Never heard of this ridiculous idea. It's just another hoax put out by the fake news in order to demean. These people are sick. Again, wanted to show that to you as, of course, it is related.